I just want to preface this video by saying that the first 6 out of the 7 myths that he's talking about, I feel as if are straw man arguments, meaning that nobody's making these claims. So it's just very strange because it's very contradictory to the nature of what these myths are. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a sec. So let's start.
Biggest reseller myths. If you guys have never been to my channel before, my name is Chris. I run a 7-figure annual reselling business, and I'm going to go over in this video 7 reseller myths that really get in the way of people really succeeding and building their online stores. Number 1 biggest reselling myth is that you don't have enough time to resell. Plenty of successful resellers operate a 10 to 15 listing per day habit in under 1 hour per day. So in today's show, I'm also going to present the solution to every single one of these myths. So people don't have enough time, and that really boils down to not knowing exactly what you're going to sell, how to photograph it, how to list it, how to store it, how to ship it. So all the pieces of the pie, you're not totally clear on the whole procedure. And secondly, you don't have a schedule so that you can fit that into your day. So reselling, the actual mechanical part, is under 1 hour per day for most people, plus the sourcing time. So I want you guys to not underestimate how long it takes to find similar items when you are sourcing. So sourcing and just finding profitable items is relatively easy, but finding items that are all similar, to trim down the mechanical part of listing, shipping, storing, that part is a little bit more challenging. So it's really important to think, I want to do this exact thing in this amount of time, and it'll really help you get rid of the issue of not having enough time to list.
Okay, did you catch anything that was strange about that? Okay, so as I said before, I feel as if this is a straw man argument, because who is specifically saying that you don't have enough time to do reselling? Unless it's your mom or something, who's, you know, somebody in your life who specifically knows that you don't have time to do this because maybe you're a college student or something and they don't want you, you know, splitting up your focus, right? So I've never heard of somebody saying that you don't have enough time to do this. If anything, reselling is usually pushed to people, saying that, like, hey, look, you could set your own hours and flexibility, because pretty much that's what they say about any side hustle that you could work from home, right? They say that about DoorDash. They say that about, Uber ride shares, right? That you set your own hours and you do your own things. So to say that you don't have enough time is a straw man argument to me. And also what he's trying to say is that the reason why you might not think that you have enough time to do this is because you don't know how to do it. But the thing is like, if I say something like, I'm not going to, I don't know, smoke a brisket or something because I don't know how to do it, that's exactly what I'm going to say. I'm not going to say it's because I don't have time to do it. You know what I mean? That's just kind of odd, because if you're going to try reselling or drop shipping or any other kind of side hustle like DoorDash or whatever, you'll probably say to yourself, you know, I'm going to try it for a month. I'm going to try it for 3 months. I'm going to try it for 6 months. So you're going to allocate time and set time aside in order to do this. That would be the human thing to do, right? So it's just, this argument is, you know, he's knocking down this argument that I don't think anybody's really making.
The second myth of reselling is that you don't have enough money to get started, or you don't have enough money to build a big business. But that's actually not true, because when you start reselling, you can start around the house and sell things that you already own, so there's no upfront cost for that. And in the resale business, the margins are quite high. You can
Right. So isn't that exactly what everybody says about reselling, that you could start pretty much with almost no money by just pawning off some stuff that you have around the house? So for him to say, well, look, that's not true because, you know, you don't need a lot of money to start. My question is, who is saying that? Who's saying the contrary? Who's saying the opposite? I'm not for reselling outside of practice and just getting started with, you know, buying and selling stuff. I don't think you should try to scale this business because there's nothing to scale. But I wouldn't tell you that you don't have any, you won't have enough money to get started, especially if you're telling people to go to discount stores or thrift stores, that you only need like 40 or 50 bucks, pick up a couple of items, and then try reselling on a small scale yourself to see if you like it or to see if you're cut out for it. Like, you know, I'm totally with that. But to say that, you know, you don't have enough money, who's pushing that argument?
You can easily double or triple your money when you're starting. So the main issue with people's stores is actually that their items aren't selling fast enough. It's not that they don't have enough money, because if you start with $1, double it into $2, double it into $4, and continue on that path, After 2 or 3 months of following that course of action, you actually have more money than time at that point. The problem is most people don't spend the time getting really good at reselling to make those items turn over quickly. So there's never an issue of having enough money, and if you find the right items, there'll be people waiting to give you the money to buy those items as long as those items are in demand and have a fast turnover. So it's really important to focus on items that sell quickly in the beginning. You always have enough money, but you will not have enough money in the world to buy items that sell too slowly. So again, focus on items that sell quickly and you will never have a cash flow problem.
Okay, see, the last sentence is very good, right? Focus on the items that sell quickly so that you don't have a cash flow problem, because you need to turn over the goods in order to get your money back. I totally agree with that. However, first he starts off with the sentence that, like, you know, in reselling, the margins are quite high, which is not entirely true. It depends what you source, right? It depends on the item that you pick up. The margins could be good, the margins could be bad, because the problem is that when you're new to reselling, and even later on, you'll always find out that, hey, maybe it's not going to sell for the price that we thought it was. Because when you watch people's videos of what sold this week, you'll see many times that people ended up, you know, had either they had to reduce the price or they had to accept an offer, which always means less than what they thought it was going to sell for. So the difficulty in reselling is always the caveat of you have to select the right items. So it's not, you know, as simple as I play the game, I'm definitely going to win. No, that's not necessarily true. There's still a difficulty of sourcing good items all the time.
Okay, so number 3 is you have to focus on high profit or high dollar items in order to succeed in reselling. And that's just not true. I think that the big difference between hobby resellers, people who do this for fun, and professional resellers, people who do it for a living, is to focus on profit per hour instead of profit per item. So I'm not looking to make a killing on any individual item. I'm just looking to make a living by
really quick, I just need to put out there that the focus on profit per hour and instead of profit per item. Okay. Profit per hour multiplied by profit per item would be your volume, right? And then profit per item would be your margins. Okay. So I think it's kind of important to focus on both. To say to focus on one instead of the other is kind of ill-advised in my opinion, because if you have a single item that has very good profit, but you don't move it very often, then that's not very good. If you have an item that moves a lot, but you're not really making the money on it, then that's not very good either. So it's good to focus on both. I wouldn't say one instead of the other.
Finding similar common items. And in fact, if you can make a living, you can make a profit on common items, you're much better off because common items are much easier to find. So as an example,
common items would also be a lot more competitive.
There are people who are looking for $500 profit items, and sometimes they only sell one per week, and that's $500 per week. That's only $20,000 a year. That normally does not pay somebody's bills. But
I'm sorry, I got to keep pausing for this one. Where are you finding these $500 profit items? Because he specifically said that. He didn't say $500 sale. He said $500 profit items. So what is an item that is $500 in profit that you didn't spend a lot of money to sell? So I imagine, you know, if you were buying something for $1 and selling it for $2, then you would just scale this to $500. So you bought something for $500 and then you sold it for $1,000 and then you get the $500 difference. If you could do that steadily, like once a week, then that's great. I don't know.
But somebody can easily find $110 profit per item per week, and that's $1,000 per week, and those items are really easy to find. So here we have two different models. One person is making $500 per item, and they're making less money than the person that's doing 10 items, $10 profit per item and 100 items per week. So it really is about how much you can make per hour and how many hours you can work versus just each individual item. So remember, focus on profit per hour versus profit per item. And then one more level higher than that is once you've figured out a system for how you can become part-time or full-time and list your 50 to 100 items per week, you can now systematize that, train other people to help you, and you can get to the point where you're selling thousands of items per week. For me, I'm selling thousands of items per week, but not by myself. I have a team, but that requires thinking about profit per hour 24 hours a day. So first you think about how much I can make on one item. That's when you're just starting. Then you figure out how many times can I do that per week? And then you figure out how many times can other people do that for me during that exact same week. And that's how you scale a resale business, but you don't have to make a lot of money per item. In fact, most of the biggest resellers in the world, their average sale price is under $12, including shipping.
Ooh, that is a lot to unpack there. Okay, so number one, all right, when he was talking, did you guys catch what was wrong with that? The thing is this: your $500 versus $1,000 is far less work as well, because you're talking about one listing that does $500. First of all, I don't even know like how many of those actually exist, right? For you to specifically be so nitpicky that I'm only doing $500 profit items. Okay. I suppose they exist out there. If you're able to do it, you probably have some expertise in it, but that's not the point. The point is that you're talking about one item, one listing that profits $500 steadily every single week, and that's $20,000, versus doing 100 items for making at $10 a piece, making $1,000 every single week, right? That's what he said. 100 items, $10 profit, $1,000 every single week, right? But that's 100 listings. So when you think about the work that's put in, isn't that 100 times the work for twice as much money? So again, do you want to make $500 doing one listing, or do you want to make $1,000, but you have to do 100 listings? I'm for the $500. I don't know about you guys. If you don't believe me, rewind it, listen to it for yourself, because that's what I heard.
Number 4 is that you have to be a niche seller. You can't actually be an everything seller. You guys know on my channel, I call people who sell everything
Who's
a
saying you have
garage
to
sale
be a
store.
niche seller?
It's perfectly fine to do that, especially up to a certain level. I think over 30 items a day, it's very difficult to sell all random knickknacks over and over and over again. But under 30 items a day, you can do that. And I actually think when you're first starting, niching down is a mistake. And this is why. In the beginning, you don't know what's common in your area, number one. So things that are common in your area, you should focus on, because you have what I call an unfair advantage. The second part, and this is the biggest advantage, is being an expert in your field. And you need sort of a way to acquire that unusual amount of knowledge. So it might be in your area, those things are common, so you have an unfair advantage. Maybe your previous job or your previous hobbies taught you a lot about that specific industry. So in the beginning, you're still exploring, you're still experimenting. You want to figure out what you have an unusual amount of experience in and what you have an unusual amount of access in. So if you have a really high experience level with a really high access level, that is the formula for success. But that is what a niche seller is. You know a lot about one thing, you can get a lot of one thing. In the beginning, though, since you don't know what those are, being an everything seller is perfectly fine. You can be successful as an everything seller. When I did my experiment of $0 to $1,000 per week, in the beginning, I was selling everything I could put my hands on: a baby book, a blender, a microphone. Every single thing was random, and it still took under 5 minutes per listing, because I know how to look for those terms on eBay, what to look for, how to price those items. So the mechanics of selling everything are actually the same. It's just that you start to streamline when you become a niche seller. So again, you can be an everything seller. It's just easier to be niche.
Okay, this one's really difficult to unpack to spot what's wrong with it. Okay, the problem with the overall advice is that it's kind of neither here nor there, because first, you're debunking a myth that nobody's saying. Nobody's saying that you have to be a niche seller, right? He's saying that you don't have to be. And then he's saying you don't have to be, but you should be. But you could be successful if you're not, but it's better if you do. So the problem with this one is that I don't know what to do with the advice as I'm watching it. Does that mean it's better that I gain expertise? So get your expertise first before you start doing any type of business on eBay, or don't even worry about it and just go. So I'm left in between, like go, don't go, go, don't go. That's the problem with this one.
Number 5 is that eBay is passive income. eBay is not actually passive income. It's actually more like a job, because you get what you put into it. So for example, if you spend 1 hour listing, photographing, putting stuff in and shipping, and then you spend 1 hour sourcing, that's like 2 hours of work.
eBay could be passive income, and it doesn't have to be passive income. If you are doing the eBay reselling model, it is definitely not passive income, because If your item doesn't sell, then your money is stuck in the item. If your item does sell, well, now you have to go get more items in order to replenish it. That alone is not passive income because you're constantly going out and resourcing. It's a lot of work. Everybody who does reselling knows that it's a lot of work because I have to keep going out and finding things to put into my online account, right? So I don't see where the myth comes from that he's debunking right now. You see what I'm saying? It's common knowledge that if you're going to specifically be reselling on eBay, thrifting, flipping stuff that you find from thrift shops, garage sales and stuff, then I don't know who's making this comment.
You can kind of expect how much money you're gonna make from those items selling to create an hourly wage. That's more like a job. So a lot of people think reselling is just something you can do here or there, but then you have here or there income. If you treat it like a job and you work a true 20 to 40 hours a week, either part-time or full-time, it will produce part-time or full-time income. I have actually never seen a reselling model that's less than 20 hours a week that produces 100-hour-a-week profit.
Right,
Doesn't really work
can't.
that way. It's sort of like a give and take. So reselling is not passive income, but it's one of the best versions of multiplying money. As my partner in the Facebook group Tech and Sports would say, eBay is the most effective way to multiply money, and I 100% agree with that. You can turn $1 into $4, $4 into $10, $10 into $20. In a stock market or a normal index fund or in the housing market, if you're making 1% a month, you are killing it. But imagine you spending $10 on an item to resell and only making 10 cents over the course of a year. That's the kind of return that a normal investment would produce. So we talk about this kind of strategy in our reseller group at patreon.com/theresellerspodcast. At this point, we've been doing it for about 2 years, and people are starting to move the money from eBay, which I consider active income. You're in there hustling, grinding, turning that money into more money by flipping it. And they're using that money to buy stuff that's a little bit more passive, like the stock market, like real estate, like maybe buying a franchise. But again, those types of investments are different and the return level is much lower than eBay. The better you can multiply your money within the eBay system in reselling, the faster your money will double up. So if you want stuff that's more passive, most of the people with a lot of passive income had a very high active income. That's sort of a secret that a lot of early retirement people don't talk about. If you want to retire early, really that comes from a high savings rate and a really high income.
Okay, this is very difficult. Okay, did you catch this one? All right. Wow. It sounds okay and it's a lot of doublespeak, but ultimately the vice is neither here nor there. There's many perspectives to look at it. The question is your money actively working for you or not? If your money is in the S&P, right, you have it in stocks and stuff, the money is actively working for you, right? It's passive income because how much it involves you, right? If you just leave the money there and then you just let it compound over time, that is a form of passive income because you're not that hands-on about it. But if you're doing something that's you're very hands-on about, then that has to be active income because it requires you to be active in order to produce that income. So for him to say, put your money into eBay is active income, that's not necessarily true too. I run a traditional business and my business is arguably passive income. What happens is that we establish tried and true lines of listings, right? So what you do is that you try just a few items at a time and you put a lot of research into them to make sure you're buying items that has a high likelihood of flipping, but it's still not guaranteed, right? So when I do that, I'm going to get a hitter every now and then, and I'll probably miss like every, 5, 6, 7 swings, but eventually I'm going to get a successful one. And when I do get a successful one, I reorder that, and that becomes one of the staple items in my account. So I build up that equity, right? So that I'm always just reordering on that. That's all I really do. So is it passive? Sort of, because for the bulk of the sales, I really don't do much other than the shipping portion of it because there's so much automation involved, right? I'm not putting up the same listing again. I'm not taking photos again. I don't have to weigh the item every single time, but I do have to check in periodically and reorder the item, see where we're at, check out some customer service, answer a few questions or whatever. But the work is so much lighter than if I have to constantly chase the sale of replenishing an item every single time it sells with another item to take its spot, but using a new listing that doesn't even have any traction the moment I initially put it up. Like listings on eBay needs time to grow. They have to start having metadata attached to it over your sales history.
Okay, another myth with reselling is that you have to have a high average sale price. That's just definitely not true. So the largest reseller on eBay actually has an average sale price of just $7, including shipping. So that store does like $40 to $65 million per year, depending on the cycle of the economy, and they make about $1 or $2 per item, and their cost of goods is really like 25 cents. So
I got to stop you here. This whole section of the high price, first of all, I don't know who the hell is claiming that, and exactly what do you mean by a high sell price, right? And then when he mentioned, something of 25 cents that sells for like $1 or $2, that's 4 times the amount, right? At $2, that's 8 times a flip. So the margins is actually very, very good when you look at it percentage wise. But what he said is about, having $1 million in sales. Guys, think about it. If you have to do an item that, sure, it's got 8x margins, right? But ultimately, you're still only pocketing $2 at the end of the day per sale. Then to make $1 million, you still need to do 500,000 sales. And if you got to do 1 million sales of $1, you're going to do 1 million individual sales. That's a lot of work to do alone. And if you hire somebody, just like a couple of times where he said, but I do this with a team, et cetera, now you always have to consider that, okay, now I have to bring on people that's going to share in my profits, attributing to my overhead significantly. So these are all kind of things that are glossed over.
They turn 25 cents into $1 or $2 over and over and over again. They have a low average sale price. And I'll tell you from my personal experience, over the last year, I've done roughly $3 million in sales reselling. I would say that on the $700,000 that I sold of that $3 million in the used category, I made more than 50% profit. So half of that or more was actually profit. And that's buying stuff with an average sale price of $24. That's me spending $1 to $5 on the item and selling it for an average of $24. Now, the other 2.3 million of that was high-end stuff with an average selling price of about $100. And on that, my average profit margin was about 10 to 20%. So
okay, we have to pause it right here. I'm really sorry. Okay, so he just said that he did $2.3 million worth of sales. Okay, I'm not saying he made $2.3 million. It's $2.3 million gross sales worth of activity of high ticket items. Okay, high priced items at $100, where he only made 10 to 20% profit. That would mean roughly, okay, every single item he spent $100 and then he sold it for $110 or $120. In essence, you are making 10 to 20 cents on the dollar. Let's just use 15 cents on the dollar. You mean to tell me that 2.3 million out of the 3 million, which accounts for a little over 75% of your business activity, you were doing something that was just making 15 cents on the dollar, and you did it for $2.3 million worth of activity? That's what I'm trying to say. The whole thing is a marathon, right? You're not talking about like one transaction and I'm just going to do it, in 2 seconds and I'm a middleman and I collect my, 15%. That's great. That's absolutely great. If you have a transaction on your phone where, boop, 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 I put in, $2 million deal and I make $300,000, right? Which is 15% of 2 million. And it was just like this one move, right? And you were done in one afternoon. Absolutely. That's awesome. But you're talking about the whole year. So it was definitely a marathon. So whatever it is you're doing, how much work is applied to it, and you're only getting 15 cents on the dollar. So you didn't stop at, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000. You went all the way to 2.3 million. That's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it?
significantly less profit per item, and those items dried up. It was very, very difficult to sustain that. That's just me buying out large personal collections of items, which is fun, and I call it cute, but it's not really sustainable because you have to continuously find those large lots, which is very difficult.
You're saying that 75% of your business activity, you are doing the fun and cute stuff? You know what I mean? I feel as if, like, if I did something in my business that was just for, you know, S's and giggles, right? And it was even at 25%, which is the other portion, I think that's kind of high for just, you know, messing around at 25% of my business activity, let alone flip that around so that 75% of my business activity was fun, just fun and cute.
It's much easier to make a living selling common items, and common items by definition have a common price. So I do a lot of work with drop shippers.
Common items at a common price means competitive, low price. Because when you're doing the reseller model, basically, if the item is common, then that means everybody has it. If the price has to be at a common price, that means it's already at a fixed perceived value. The problem with reselling is if I have this item and you have this item and they also have this item and we're all selling it in the same marketplace, how do you stand out your item from somebody else? You didn't develop this item. How do you add value? Well, there's pretty much only two main options that you have. You can either give more or take less. And in that case, it would be that if we're selling some shirts or whatever, then we throw in a free cap. So now we're giving more, but that's going to cost us. And the other option would be to take less. So we're just going to send people offers or price it down a little or accept people's offers. Right. That would be taking less. Either way, it's more of a cost to us. So the whole, you know, high profit margin, whatever that he said in the first myth, it kind of doesn't align with that, does it?
50% of eBay is actually $12 including shipping or under. 90% of eBay is $30 including shipping or under. So if you only sell items over $30, you are eliminating 90% of the eBay customers. So don't be afraid to sell cheap items at a profit quickly, because that's the model for 99% of people who make millions.
That is neither here nor there. Okay. I don't know if you guys caught that. It seems to make sense the moment that he said that, right? 90% of the transactions on eBay is at $30. So if you don't do $30 items, right, you're in that 10%. That is not true. And that's not the way to look at things. Every single item customers shop for, that you shop for, because you've been a customer, right? Were there times where you were a $30 shopper and there were times where you were a $10 shopper and there were times where you were a $50 shopper? People are not pigeonholed and bracketed into these prices, right? So people are going to look for what they look for, and then they're going to buy whichever ones that they think is worth the money. It's that simple. It's every single listing is a case-by-case basis based on what people searched for. So the whole collective of average sold items by eBay is a statistic that has nothing to do with us. Because if I'm successfully selling things at $45, this is not a reason to intentionally pivot and find something at $30. You could be selling a $30 item and be making a killing. You could be selling a $30 item and dumping it and not making any money, right? So one doesn't dictate the other. So I feel as if this is causing a fake fear of missing out if you're not doing $30 items as well. It's creating a false sense of urgency that isn't actually there. If you're selling $50 items and doing great, and you don't have a real strong reason to sell lower end stuff or whatever, then this is not the reason to do it.
So one more caveat for people is that you can do whatever model you want if you just want to make a couple bucks. But if you're trying to make a lot of money, there are some principles that are always the same.
If you're trying to make a lot of money, there are some principles that are all the same. He's going to, this is the part that gets really egregious for me, because now he's going to start describing my business, which advocates away from eBay reselling, which I find just completely rich.
People who are successful generally have a schedule. They generally sell the same types of items over and over again, and they generally have help. It's help when they're going on the same route and talking to the same people. They're going to the same places to source. They're listing things the same way. They have the same inventory system. So you want to sell similar on everything in your life that produces positive results. Don't reinvent the wheel. Just keep doing those things that are successful over and over again. And that's much easier to do when the items are common and easy to find.
This is a gross oversimplification of my business model, but he does say if you want to be successful, right, this is what successful people do. And he recognizes that, which, you know, essentially either he understands what the traditional business model really is because, you know, it's the basis of all things. It's what your average convenience store to Costco is, right? What you want to do is find items that move consistently and try to retain that success by ordering a supply so that you could do it over and over again. So the way he's explaining it is a very elementary way of explaining it, right? You want to do the same things with the same people, right? So what I do is that once I've developed a certain item that in my category that I know is constantly moving, right? I get it from the same spot. I work with the same sourcing agents. I work with the same people over and over again to replicate the same success. Correct. So ultimately, the problem with this video is that you're putting out traditional method truths to sound good, yet you're advocating for eBay reselling, which is a model that it's not that it doesn't make money. It's not that it doesn't work. It's that it doesn't really scale the same way a traditional business would. And it doesn't ultimately help you generate more passive income through automation so that you're not worried about chasing the next sale.
Number 7, and my favorite myth, is that you don't have to list every day. So please comment below which myth is your favorite.
This one's
you can
my
reach out
favorite
to me
myth.
at chris@dailyrefinement.com if you have any questions. But you don't have to list every day means you can actually schedule your listings for the future. eBay works best when you list the same number of items every single day because the traffic remains the same.
Okay, so I have to pause it here again. All right. Did you catch this? He's saying that the myth is you don't have to list every single day because you could take advantage of scheduling your listings in advance so that you are listing every single day. So the myth is that you don't have to list every single day because you can just list every single day, because you don't have to list every single day because you use the scheduler system in order to list every single day. Does that not, like, it's just comical to me. I'm sorry about that. We're supposed to analyze the advice and not the advisor, but this one is just like, you know, above and beyond in the logic. But you got to hear what the rest of he has to say. Okay.
Every single day. So let's look at it this way. eBay will give you X number of people for every listing you put up. If you put up a similar number of listings every single day, you have a traffic line that remains the same, so you'll have similar sales every single day. If you list a different amount of items every single day, you're going to have random sales, and nobody likes that. So,
okay, you're going to have random sales no matter what, because you have random items. You have random one-off items. If everything in your store is tried and true developed items that you tried it on your store for 90 days and it consistently moves 5 units every single day, and all of your listings are like that, you got 10 or 20 listings like that, yes, you will have steady sales. But if you have a whole bunch of one-off items, some stuff sold, you know, yesterday, some stuff will sell today, and some stuff might sell in 8 months, you'll have fluctuating sales regardless of what happens. If anything, when you listen to a lot of people who do YouTube that are doing reselling, they tell you that the business is like a roller coaster, especially a lot of people who do vintage clothing. It turns out that their fourth quarters are usually their worst quarters because holiday seasons, you know, people are less likely to buy used and vintage things as gift. I'm not saying nobody does it, but a lot less people do that. So what's a holiday rush for most people, like in my business, I'm selling new item first-hand items. So therefore, we always have the big Christmas rush, right? And it's the complete opposite for some resellers who are doing used and vintage clothing. So the thing to understand here is that when you put up new listings, they don't collectively help each other, right? You're going to get an anecdotal sense that it helps your store because look, if you have 10 listings that you put up yesterday, and then you put up 10 listings today, and you plan to put up 10 listings tomorrow, then if you only had the 10 listings yesterday, then you have 10 chances of making a sale. And then by tomorrow, you'll have 30 chances of making a sale, right? So now it's going to feel like busy, my store is buzzing, right? But when those items sell and you don't replenish those things, that buzz goes back down. Now, the issue is that when you're selling all of these one-off items, every single item is individually evaluated by all the customers who search for it and that the eBay algorithm decides to show your listing to, right? So it's a case-by-case basis. So this kind of information really conflates the anecdotal feeling of collective sales versus the performance of each individual listing that gets put up. But then this advice gets even crazier. You'll see what I mean in a second.
So the fact that you don't have to list every day and you can take advantage of eBay's scheduled listings is really important because in our mentorship group, plenty of people do 70 listings on just Saturday and schedule out 10 listings to go live every single day and they take 6 days off. Me personally, I always run a 6-day reselling schedule.
So the problem is that it's the same amount of work, isn't it? You could do 10 listings every single day, or you could do 70 listings on Saturday and then spread them out through the week with scheduling.
And take Saturday off. People love reselling because they can be flexible with their schedule, but you don't want to be flexible with your income. You want to have a stable income with a flexible schedule. Those are the two things that you want to combine, and that's what reselling can do for you.
It's the times when he says stuff like that I'm in agreement with him, right? That you could set your own schedule. That's absolutely true because you're your own boss. That's how every self-employed setup works, that you could set your own schedules. And then he says, but you don't want to be flexible, with your income. Yeah, absolutely. It's these general truths that make the video very praiseworthy, right? But once we get, deeper into it, then you'll see it gets really strange
for you. So remember, you don't have to list every single day, but you should have a consistent inflow of products into your store. Every store that has slow sales, the solution to this, and the most important thing to remember, is that eBay will turn your store back on if you put a fresh number of listings into your store every single day for a week.
If you put in a fresh listings every single week, then eBay will turn your store back on. When did they turn your store off? That's my question. Because, okay, if you're doing a regular traditional business and you got 4 steady listings that you've tested and proved, and they constantly move 5 units every day for the past 90 days, right? So you could even project that it will continue to do that for at least the next 30 or 60 days, right? There's no reason to think otherwise. So if I went ahead and did 20 orders every day, fulfilled them, and put up the tracking number and interacted with the customers, receiving feedbacks and answering customer service questions, so that ultimately at the end of the month, I did 600 units. All that activity, you're saying eBay thinks I'm inactive and it's going to turn my store off? That doesn't make any sense. That's not how eBay works.
I have never seen an example where somebody lists 5 quality new items a day for 7 straight days and their store didn't turn back on.
Let's say, I got 100 items and then 30 of them sold, and then the other 70 are kind of duds. It's going to feel like my store is dead, right? And then I go source 50 new items and then I put them on. And now I have activity and some stuff sold again. And now it's going to feel like my store turned on. So this is this is super misleading this is not how eBay it actually works. It's really misguided between an anecdotal feeling and what's actually happening on the back end.
Whether you went on vacation, whether you've been inconsistent the last 4 months, Whatever your situation is, 1 week of consistently adding brand new items to your store 100% works. Now,
let's say you started off with 500 listings in your store. Let's just say we did that. And then you sold 200 listings, right? That's great. It feels like, woo, this thing is working. And then those other 300 don't sell. Maybe those 300 didn't sell simply just because nobody wants those other 300 items, or you did something wrong with the listings, right? So if you put up 70 new listings, you're going to get a little bit of activity because those are 70 new listings. Every single listing that you have at the end of the day are single performers.
One final thought before we leave, so please smash the like button and consider subscribing. People are always going to ask, what about delist, relist? What about ending an item and adding an item? So let's say you had 100 items in your store and you delist 10 and relist 10. You still only have 100 items in your store. You just remove them and put them back in. If you decide this, instead of doing that, you add in 10 fresh items, now you have 110 items in your store. And if you go back and correct some of the 100 items that aren't selling as well and you improve those, now you have a double whammy and your sales are for sure gonna go up because you're adding fresh blood into your store. You're feeding the beast. eBay's happy that you've got fresh stuff in the store. And they're also happy that you're going in and improving your old listings by fixing the title, adding new item specifics, making a more aggressive price. So it's really important to understand.
Okay, keep in mind that a more aggressive price means a lower price again. And the thing about this is that this is when some of the truths slowly start to come out that you really have to be laser focused on, which is going back and revising your listings. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to be doing good items and good listings. And that is the minimum requirement. The biggest problem about reselling is that these gurus, they tell you to jump too quickly into the action. They just tell you to jump into the execution portion of the business immediately, when the thing is that you should be understanding what items are good for the market. You have to understand the markets first so that you could come up with what item that you should go with. Otherwise, you're just constantly going to be blind shooting and you're going to need a lot of time before you discover what an actually good item is. So let me explain to you guys exactly how eBay works that a lot of these gurus are not going to tell you. There is a front end portion and a back end portion of every single listing that's out there. And the problem is that a traditional business model is going to collect a lot of the back end metadata on their listing, while a reseller model sells that off the moment the listing is gone. So when you think about what the algorithm is looking for, it'll specifically tell you that it's looking for titles, item specifics, photos, and descriptions, right? However, that is the bare minimum to play the game. You have to do good on all four of those elements, but so am I, so are they, so are they. So if everybody is doing, A+ content on the title, item specifics, the photos, and the description, then explain to me exactly how Cassini is supposed to rank one listing over the other if we were all doing the same item in the same category. There's no other metric for Cassini to favor one listing over another listing. That's the problem. So the back end is ultimately what takes you from the front of the line and pushes you even further into the rankings, okay, even further up the system. So over time, when you have a listing that has a lot of sales history and a lot of conversion rate on top of, all the click-through rate and stuff, right? That gets pushed further and further. But how could you do that if you only have a one and done item and the moment that you sell this listing, it's gone. All the history is gone and you have to start from scratch every single time. The problem with reselling is about momentum. That's the issue. It's not about if you could sell one item every now and then and make up a couple of bucks. Anybody can do that. The problem is, where is the momentum going? Because you sell that off every single time and you start from scratch. I don't start from scratch. We have replenishable goods so that the listing can stay there, so that Cassini can see, okay, this guy, his listing has sold over 100 times in the past 30 days, and how much sales history, how much conversion rate, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of numbers behind my listings on the back end that a reseller's listings wouldn't have. So once you understand this, then you could see that both eBay and confirmed by Zeek Analytics, that Cassini, the algorithm, heavily favors the back end of each listing if you want to get really, really up there in the rankings, right? So if that's the case, and he's telling you that you have to put up more fresh listings, then you tell me, who are you supposed to listen to? Because both can't be true at the same time. My store will turn on if I put on more listings. My somehow putting on new listings will help my old listings. No, none of that makes any sense, and none of that is true. All it's going to do is give you a collectively, right, some more sales, because I collectively replenished some new merchandise. So now I could sell some stuff again. And when my stuff sells off, it's just gone.